docs.
Thanks all for joining. Ofer will go over the discussions for the SDC and CDS integration. Go ahead, Ofer.
Okay, thanks. So there are a few APIs and a few ways that I'd like to review today that was already implemented with DC Designer, and I think that would fit for the CDS as well and should be implemented in the same way. So first of all, DC Designer, and also again it would be relevant for CDS. They have their own Docker images and their own repositories on Gerrit, and the GUI that is part of DC Designer is shown in SDC in an iframe eventually. You're all familiar with the iframes, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe who's actually engaging with front-end development. So it's a way to obviously load some sort of different URL to the same window in the browser. So what we implement in SDC is a generic designer support. I think you're already familiar with that document. Are you?
Yes, I have seen this document.
Okay, so basically there's a library that you can consume, a JavaScript library that we wrote, and you can consume that library to achieve integration with the SDC itself, which would be eventually the window that would contain the CDS, the CDS GUI, really. So here in this document you can find the documentation and the configuration that should be set in order to add a new plugin. Here you can see the workflow designer, for example, and DCE designer that are already integrated today. Also, let me just find this. So basically, the whole thing is based on events. So you can just subscribe to certain events that happen in SDC itself, like check-in or check-out, or as you can see here, window out or version change, or different things that happen in SDC Designer that you can react to. You can react to these events and maybe make some things happen once you recognize that these events were fired. So it's all documented here, and this is basically first step. And I have this picture, like screenshot here. So you can see my pointer too, right? Just making sure. Okay, so the part I'll be marking here, it's the part of SDC, also the left side here. And then in this example, DCE Designer chose to create a new item here. They call it monitoring. Monitoring. It is part of the configuration, so maybe I can show it here so it will be more clear. Okay. So yeah, that would be the configuration. Display name is the actually link on the sidebar here. It's just not up to date maybe, but monitor or monitoring, that would be text that would appear here. And then the rest of the area here that I can see on the screen, it's the iframe, and then its contents. It's developed by DC Designer in that case, and in a similar way in CDS. So part of the events mechanism here, some data is being exchanged between the two windows, because obviously it's the outer window is SDC and the inner one is DC Designer or any plugin. So that's what we call a context plugin, because it's actually embedded in under a service context. So there is another option. I think it's less relevant. I think we also reviewed it last meeting. We call it a tab. and then a tab would have another link on top, like you have today, catalog, onboarding, and then you would have, in that example, you would have DC or DC designer, another tab on the top when you're on the main page, not in a service context, and then it's in a similar way with an iframe. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd like to work only in the context of a service, right?
Yes, within a service.
Okay. So basically, again, this area is an iframe. You can get the whole service metadata and the relevant information with the event-based PubSub API, and then you can know what is the service that the user is working on, and you have the whole data that is relevant. This is the first part. Any questions so far?
Yes, I actually have one question. If you can go to the JSON that you showed before with the details about this plugin. Here you have in the context part something called display context, and it lists two options, the VF and service. In case of VF, is that still within a service context, so it's a node within the service, or how to interpret that?
So this would allow you to set your plugin, in that case monitoring, in what context you'd like to show this. So here we support VF and service. You can support only service if that's necessary for CDS.
Right.
So it's up to you. It's a
PNF, you can even go VF module, but for our context, we would always be either at the VNF level or PNF level that we are persisting this CDS blueprint information.
Okay, so this would be set right there. Also, you can set the relevant roles that are.
I guess you have some different context for PNF that you're using.
So yeah, you should be able to set the PNF here, just like we have a service and VF. Okay. Other questions before I continue to the rest of the implementation? Okay. So in that screen, again, it loads a different. It points to a different Docker, a different Jetty server or other server, Tomcat, whatever you'd like to choose. So it's completely decoupled. And then you can have your own, you can choose even your own technologies to implement, not necessarily Angular, could be React or different backend and front-end technologies. And then our library is generic. It's based on JavaScript, but JavaScript is every front-end, of course, and you could use React or Angular or other frameworks. And then at some point, you'd like maybe to create a new artifact, right? And push it, attach it to a service or PNF or a VNF, like you said. And for this purpose, we have actually wanted to show you that screen. You're familiar also probably with the reader docs already, but if you go to SDC and reader docs, you can see under offered APIs, in whatever format you'd like to see it, you can see that we have what we call external APIs, which allow you to control a few things that in that case, I think what you'd like to do with this is to like CRUD operations for artifacts. So you can create, delete, and update artifacts of whatever type you'd like to choose. So it's all documented here and exactly what should be the payload. For example, if you want to delete an artifact, that would be the API. And here describe the body that is expected for the request.
Can you go to the upload one for a second?
Again, sorry.
Can you go to the upload?
Upload artifact, yeah, let's find it. Upload of artifact to VF operation. So you should set the UID of the resource. Resource could be, you can see it all here. Just a moment. I'll find it later, okay. Anything particular about that screen, about that request? Artifact UID, operation UID, as you can see here.
Now, these UUIDs, is that the designer has to generate, or is this something that?
You should generate the UUIDs. Once you upload, you actually creating something. You should set the UUIDs.
Okay. And the UUIDs are, what format are they?
You can find it's a long string with dashes. You can use a generic generator.
Oh, it's the generic one. Okay. Yeah.
You can find it really easily. Okay. And you should maybe review the UUID implementation that we have today in SDC, or maybe even in DC Designer.
Yep.
As an example. Should be easy to find as well. I mean, just look for UUID in one of the files you can find. And then everything is the terminology here is resources and services. So resources can be a VF or PNF, and we also documented here the types. Let me find it. Should be resource type. It's like an enum. It was right there, right? Okay. So here it can work with PNF, VF, or VFC, and all the other types that we have today in the catalog. Sorry about the noise. I'm not sure. Okay. So
and,
that was these are the relevant APIs. Yeah, go ahead.
What about the artifact type? Remember we mentioned we will have a new artifact type.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something we would? Can you show us where that is included?
Of course. So just a moment. Just one addition before I'll show this these two, but before I just don't want to forget this part. So in order to use these external APIs, you should create a consumer. So today we have by default these consumers, and it's also documented here in the wiki how exactly you should create, and then basically just in order to use the external APIs, you should have like a username and password, some sort of consumer name and a password. And here it's documented how to generate ones specifically for CDS, because every client has their own credentials. Okay. So this one is important to do before using these APIs, and then I just want to find the right file here for you. Just a moment. Okay. So we have a configuration file that where we set the artifact types by the type of the artifact. So this file called B configuration should be a YAML file, and also ERB file really, which is the template. So here we can see the artifact types, and here you can just add a new type. Okay, that type, of course, you will have to use as a parameter in these APIs. Where is that?
That's part of the payload?
Yeah. Artifact, no, that's artifact name. At some point you'd have to specify what's the artifact type, and then type should be defined here. Okay. And is that a deployment artifact, by the way?
What do you mean by
I assume so. Okay, it's relevant to deployment, obviously, because we have different kinds of artifacts. We have informational artifacts, which usually are about user guides for the VNF or PNF. Deployment artifacts are the ones that actually related to the deployment instantiation.
Yeah, it should be deployment.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. So basically, in that file, you can see it is set. Let's find it. That's resource deployment artifacts, and then here you can use your artifact type, and then what kind of files should be attached to it. Then we have also validation in case user like to upload themselves the file, if you'd like to allow it. And I think there is an example also. Yeah, accepted types, nothing. So that would cause no validation at all. So it's worth exploring that area and the implementation of the other types that we have. But I think in CDS, it should be only CDS that set that artifact, right? Not the user should do this manually, right?
No, the user should not. It should be only by CDS.
Okay.
And you said like we have a zip formatted, so we can add the zip here, or it could be. You also said it could be any no valid types.
Yeah, if you leave it empty, so it would cause like it wouldn't limit the support the accepted file types really.
Okay, so maybe we will go with.
You can leave this empty, or just go to zip if you'd like. What works for you.
Okay.
But that file mostly defines the whole artifact types as a configuration. So I think that'd be mostly about it. I think these are the relevant APIs and how to add the new artifact type. I also, I'm quite sure I showed you before the ONAP UI library. Did we talk about it? Let me find it. Do you know if you would like to implement this in with Angular or React or maybe other technology?
We're using Angular, okay?
In Angular, okay. So we have that library. I mean, it's also used in the C Designer, for example, that table and this button and the whole look and feel should be consistent around SDC and its plugins. Okay, so we have a library. It's currently on GitHub, but we are working with Linux Foundation to port it to Gerrit, and it will be available there soon as well. But here you can see, I think. So we have a lot of UI components implemented both for React and Angular. Could be buttons, for example. Okay, something's. Try a different one. Not sure what's going on here with the scroll bars. I think my version of the Internet Explorer here is really old. That's why probably. Let me switch to Chrome. Yeah, okay, I'll stop the sharing just for one moment, okay? Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So here we, as I said before, we have many UI components, like the checkbox in various states. We have lots of icons and the buttons that I mentioned before that you saw in the CE Designer. This should make the look and feel consistent around SDC, and I suggest you use this one. I mean, while reviewing, we will look for the UI consistency here. And it also should save you a lot of time to have these models and really many UI components that are very common. So I suggest to use this library as well. Again, at this point it's in GitHub, but later on it should be available in Linux Foundation as well. Obviously, of course, if you find that something is missing here, and then it would be you'd be welcome to contribute maybe new components if you find anything that maybe is missing. Okay, so try working with this, and so we have a consistent user experience. Yeah, so that'd be basically, I think.
Do you also have an example of how this, for example, for the monitoring artifacts, where in the Caesar it has been placed?
So I'm not sure I have an example. Let me see. Basically, we have an artifacts folder in the Caesar. I don't have an example at this moment, but I can find one if you like and send you later. In the Caesar, which is basically a zip file, yeah, we have an artifacts folder and then a deployment folder because it's a deployment artifact in that case. And there you can find any deployment artifact that is part of the Caesar file. Yeah, basically it's just a zip file with whatever files that were uploaded as deployment artifacts, and they can be found right there. So nothing really really interesting maybe about the implementation, because once we have the deployment artifacts under a certain entity like a PNF or VNF uploaded with these APIs, it's just packed as part of the Caesar, which again, it's a zip file really in the relevant folder.
So let me ask you this question, because in your Caesar you have resources, right? So I guess it would be like artifact resources, and then you have VNF resource or PNF resource, right? And then within that VNF or PNF resource, you have deployment, and then within that deployment, you'll have these artifacts?
It's more complicated because we have, I mean, all the PNFs and VNFs are that are part of the service. Basically, they're all part of the Caesar, and every subcomponent of that service, like a VNF or PNF, has its own artifacts that are part of the Caesar eventually of that service. So basically, we have Tosca templates as well. So it's really, there's a structure of the. Try to look for an example. No, not this one. Yeah, but this process is already implemented, and once you upload your artifact, it can be found in the Caesar, and once a client would parse the Caesar file, can find your artifact inside. And we have SDC Tosca project for this.
Okay. So I guess once we try it out, we can take a look at where this artifact is being placed. Okay. So
just found one. Sorry to.
Oh yeah, this is good. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So it should be similar to this. This one it could be maybe a little bit old, but the structure looks pretty much the same. So under definitions we have the Tosca, which is not really relevant maybe, right, for you guys. It just under relevant PNF or VNF you would find a Tosca that describes it has a certain artifact. And then inside artifact you can find, in this example, these are ANDI artifacts, what we call, and are XML files. But here basically you can find your file that was uploaded as an artifact. So it's quite simple. It's all there.
So just the one related question: how do you understand the link between an artifact and a particular VNF or PNF?
So this is part of the APIs, really.
So I mean, if you look then in the Caesar, how do I understand that this artifact belongs to this VNF?
Okay, so we have, as you see here, so here we have a Pavel VF, what we used in the designer. These are the names, yeah. But this is one VF, this is another VF, and this is the service. You can see by the name of the files, of course. Also in artifacts, you can see there's an artifact for each VF, and one for the service itself by its name, just by its name.
So if you open those artifacts in your resource, I think in your resource itself, there should be some sort of, linkage, right? That this resource has this specific artifact.
Of course, I can show you this too. I'm not sure even if it's, let me see.
I think that file should be something like that. Resource, you see, like StamVF file resource. I think we need to have some sort of linkage like that.
As I said before, I think this is imports. It's really, really old Caesar files. I'm not sure, that's why I wasn't sure to even use this. But let me see. Let me see this too. Yeah, we can find it here. I'm actually not. I'm not sure if it's just by file name convention, or it actually is part of the Tosca. In that Caesar, which again, it's really, really old, like 2017, right? We can't find the connection inside the Tosca, but I wouldn't have. I mean, I'd like to see a new Caesar to actually make sure. But one way or another, the file should be there, and it's already implemented and working in Casablanca and even in Beijing or Amsterdam releases. Artifacts, basically, implementation is really old and works really well, so the file will be there, and if it should be part of the Tosca, so SDC will generate it for you.
Right. We want to make sure there's a linkage into Tosca because when we ingest the Tosca, not all Tosca will have a blueprint. We want to make sure, based on the Tosca, when to extract the blueprint and have some sort of file associated so that we can extract from the artifact table itself.
There, of course, yeah. We will verify. I just found a newer one. This is not that new as well, but okay, let's take a look. So here you already see that we have a folder for deployment artifacts, which we didn't see it before. And here is the artifact type, and that's the XML file. Should be VIMS. Then let's look in its definition. The resource VIMS. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure it's part of the Tosca then. Could be just a naming convention that.
I saw some file. Can you go up a little bit?
There?
Resource, NSD, resource.
Sorry. Yeah, these are the YAML files that you. Yeah, sure we have them right there. Maybe the interface. I don't think so. Okay, so no, I don't see it here. So it's not part of the Tosca, I think, but I can check this with the more up-to-date Caesar file. But again, it could be that it's based on file name convention. I will check this and let you know. But again, this part is already implemented and it works today with lots of artifact types, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or think you'd like anything?
Oscar, you have any questions here?
No.
The only other question also I had, I don't know if you got a chance to look at the PNF ingestion. If you recall, Melina sent out an email with all the ingestion rules that the controller has. Do we need to change anything for PNF, or would it work with the current process?
Who sent it again?
Lilina.
I'm not sure I saw that email. Was it sent to me as well?
Yeah, we had like this discussion, I think 2 weeks back. Let me just send a follow-up. If you can take a look at it.
Of course. If you can forward it to me, so I'll review this again. What was the question about the PNF again? I mean.
Well, we basically have a process today for doing ingestions of Tosca, and the question on the call was that with PNFs, would anything change? And what we agreed was that you will take a look at the current APIs that CNC is using for ingestion of Tosca, and let us know if there will be a change in there.
Okay, I'll have to check this, and if you can forward me that email, I'll take another look. I also want you to know at this stage we do not support deployment artifacts for PNFs, but it will be part of Dublin release, and this is developed as part of the 5G use case by Nokia and Ericsson. Okay, so I suggest maybe you can work with VNFs at this stage of the development, and then once Nokia and Ericsson will finish the contribution for deployment artifacts for PNFs as part of the PNF onboarding that we will implement, then you can test the functionality, but the APIs are the same, okay, both for VNFs and PNFs.
Okay, so from from designer perspective, would anything be different then, or is just that the back end is changing to support the PNF use case?
Yeah, it's just the back end really. Yeah, for the user it's the same.
Okay, so we will implement it for both use cases and just wait until they are done with their development to verify the PNF use case.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay.
I just have a quick question regarding this. I see that you're showing this. It's a local file. So this will eventually be in the read the docs.
That file?
Yeah, yeah, exactly what you're showing right now. The
Yeah,
API,
it's already here. It's the
okay,
HTML doc
okay.
that I showed you. Okay, but you
excellent.
can find it also in PDF or Swagger JSON. It's already
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I can send you maybe all these relevant links if you like. You can reply all, and with the I think that's most of the documentation that is relevant, and then we can keep track of it easily. Even though it's mostly out there in the wiki and read the docs, but still. And please do forward me that email so I can look into this. Okay.
Yeah, this is really good. I appreciate Ofer for taking the time to walk us through this implementation.
It's my pleasure. No problem.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And I will also send out the recording link once it becomes available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.